Yep, sure.
Mrs. Duffey. Hi guys. So Mrs. Damus said that you all requested me to come and tell you about a book. And so when I was trying to think about what book I wanted to do, I went to my library to get it and I didn't have it. And so I went and bought it because I couldn't not have it, although I may donate it to you because it's one of my favorite books of all time. This is Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I don't know if you ever heard this one. No? All right. Originally, I read it because somebody told me that it was really good. I think I was in high school the first time I read it. But it's essentially a random, normal, everyday, ordinary, very ordinary guy on planet Earth. And he discovers that there is not just planet Earth, and as a matter of fact, planet Earth is kind of a joke. And then the dolphins abandon the planet because the dolphins are the highest life form. And then the planet's about to be destroyed. So he finds out that there's aliens 10 seconds before the Earth is going to be destroyed. Because his friend is actually an alien who's been living on Earth. So he finds out, and then he goes through the galaxy with this friend. But Hitchhiker's Guide is the book that he has with him. That is hilarious. And so the whole thing is just kind of a goofy, offbeat, silly kind of book. But I really like the humor in it, and I really just think it's a fun, quick read. Also, if you want to know the answer to the life, the universe, and everything, they answer that in the book as well. So, I don't know, it entertains me immensely. It's right up my alley in terms of humor. So I suppose if you like kind of goofy, silly books, then it's a good one to read that way. But it's a whole different realm. There's a movie about it too that they made several years later, way later, I think. So I thought what I would do is probably read you the little introduction because that gives you kind of a better idea of what the book is like. And I literally was like, oh, I'm supposed to read a passage. So I'll just open it up and see. And I opened it up to a part and was like, well, that'll work. Because I think you could just about do that in any part in the book because it's just kind of a goofy book. So it starts out like this. Far out in the uncharted backwaters of the unfashionable end of the western spiral of the arm of the galaxy lies a small, unregarded yellow sun. Orbiting this at a distance of roughly 98 million miles is an utterly insignificant little blue-green planet whose ape descendant life forms are so amazingly primitive that they still think digital watches are a pretty neat idea. The planet has, or rather had, a problem which was this. Most of the people living on it were unhappy for pretty much all of the time. Many solutions were suggested for this problem, but most of these were largely concerned with the movements of small green pieces of paper, which is odd because on the whole, it's not the small green pieces of paper that were unhappy. So the problem remained. Lots of people were mean, and most of them were miserable, and even the ones with digital watches. Many were increasingly of the opinion that they'd all made a big mistake in coming down from the trees in the first place, and some said that even the trees had been a bad move and no one should have ever left the oceans. And then one Thursday, nearly 2,000 years after one man had been nailed to a tree for saying how great it would be to be nice to people for a change, a girl sitting on her own in a small cafe in Ricksmanworth suddenly realized what it was that had been going wrong all this time. She finally knew how the world could be made good and a happy place. This time, it was right. It would work, and no one would ever have to get nailed to anything. Sadly, however, before she could get to a phone to tell anyone about it, a terrible, stupid catastrophe occurred and the idea was lost forever. This is not her story. But it is the story of that terrible, stupid, catastrophic event and some of its consequences. It is also the story of a book called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, not an Earth book, never published on Earth. And until the terrible catastrophe occurred, never seen or heard of by any Earth man. Nevertheless, a wholly remarkable book. In fact, it was probably the most remarkable book ever to come out of the great publishing corporations of Ursa Minor, on which no Earthman had ever heard of either. Not only is it a wholly remarkable book, it is also a highly successful one. More popular than Celestial Home Care Omnibus, better selling than the 53 More Things to Do in Zero Gravity, and more controversial than Olin Cupid's trilogy of philosophical blockbusters, Where God Went Wrong, some more of God's greatest mistakes, and Who is this God person anyway? In many of the more relaxed civilizations on the outer eastern rim of the galaxy, the Hitchhiker's Guide has already supplanted the great Encyclopedia Galactica as the standard repository of all knowledge and all wisdom. For though it has many omissions and contains much that is apocryphal, or at least wildly inaccurate, it scores over the older, more pedestrian work in two important respects. First, it is slightly cheaper, and second, it has the words "Don't Panic" inscribed in large, friendly letters on its cover. But the story of this terrible, stupid Thursday, the story of its extraordinary consequences, and the story of how these consequences are inextricably intertwined with this remarkable book begins very simply. It begins with a house. So that's the introduction. And then right in the middle, I have a page that I'll read you. Obviously kind of weird because it's in the middle of the story, right? But entertaining. Arthur was still lying in the curve of the floor where he had fallen. He didn't look up, he just lay panting. We're trapped now, aren't we? Yes, said Ford, we're trapped. Well, you didn't think of anything? I thought you were going to think of something. Perhaps you thought of something, and I didn't notice. Oh yes, I thought of something, panted Ford. Arthur looked up expectantly, but unfortunately, continued Ford, it rather involved being on the other side of this airtight hatchway. He kicked the hatch they'd just been thrown through. But it was a very good idea, was it? Oh yes, very neat. What was it? Well, I hadn't worked out the details yet. Not much point now, is there? So, what happens next? Asked Arthur. Oh, well, the hatchway in front of us will open automatically in a few minutes. We'll shoot out into deep space, and I expect asphyxiate. If you take a lungful of air, you can last for up to 30 seconds, of course, said Ford. He stuck his hands behind his back, raised his eyebrows, and started to hum an old battle hymn. To Arthur's eyes, he suddenly looked very alien. So this is it, said Arthur. We are going to die. Yes, said Ford, except no, wait a minute. He suddenly lunged across the chamber at something behind Arthur's line of vision. What's this switch, he cried. What? Where? Cried Arthur, twirling around. No, I was only fooling, said Ford. We're going to die. He slumped against the wall and carried on the tune from where he left off. You know, said Arthur, at times like this, when I'm trapped in a Vulcan airlock with a man from Bellatus, about to die of asphyxiation in deep space, I really wish I'd listened to what my mother told me when I was young. Why? What did she tell you? Oh, I don't know. I didn't listen. Oh, said Ford, carrying on humming. This is terrific, Arthur thought to himself. Nelson's column is gone, McDonald's is gone, all that's left is me and the words mostly harmless. Any second now, all that will be left is mostly harmless. And yesterday the planet seemed to be going so well. A motor whirred, a slight hiss built into a deafening roar of rushing air as the outer hatchway opened into an empty blackness, studded with tiny, impossibly bright points of light. Ford and Arthur popped out into outer space like corks from a toy gun. And that's like smack in the middle of the book. So, there you go. I think it's funny. It entertains me. Did I pass?
You passed.